In the summer of 1979, Southern California was a place of open highways, beach towns, and teenagers moving freely between school, church, and home. That sense of safety would be shattered over the course of 4 months by a series of disappearances that, at first, seemed unconnected. This is the case that became known as the Toolbox Killers. The first victim was Lucinda Lynn Schaefer, known as Cindy, who was 16 years old. On June 24, 1979, she was walking home from a Christian youth meeting when she disappeared. She never arrived. Later, only one of her shoes was found by the roadside. There was no clear witness, no obvious struggle recorded, and no immediate suspect. For her family, there was only absence and unanswered questions. Weeks passed. On what investigators would later document as a pattern, another young woman vanished. Andrea Hall, 18, disappeared after being picked up in the area of the Pacific Coast Highway and Palos Verdes Boulevard. Then came Jacqueline Gilliam, 15, and Jacqueline Leah Lamp, only 13. 4 girls, gone across the summer and into the fall, each taken from ordinary places on ordinary days. At this stage, the cases did not obviously fit together in the public eye. Missing teenagers were investigated, but the connections between them were not yet clear. What the girls shared was youth, vulnerability, and the misfortune of crossing paths with 2 men who had planned in advance to do harm. Those 2 men were Lawrence Sigmund Bittaker and Roy Lewis Norris. Bittaker was born on September 27, 1940, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Norris was born on February 5, 1948. The 2 had not known each other for most of their lives. They met behind bars at the California Men's Colony in San Luis Obispo in the late 1970s. It was there that a partnership formed between 2 men with extensive criminal histories. Bittaker was released on parole in October 1978. Norris followed, released on parole in January 1979. Free again, and reunited on the outside, they acquired a silver van. The crimes attributed to them spanned a precise and terrible window, from June 24 to October 31, 1979. The final victim was Shirley Lynette Ledford, 16 years old. On October 31, 1979, Halloween, she was heading home from a party in Los Angeles when she was kidnapped. Unlike the earlier victims, whose disappearances left investigators with fragmentary evidence, the Ledford case would prove pivotal. Her body was found, and that discovery moved the investigation forward in ways the earlier cases had not. The breakthrough came not from the crime scenes alone, but from human sources. Word of the men's activity reached authorities. On November 20, 1979, both Bittaker and Norris were arrested. Once in custody, the full scope of what had happened over those 4 months began to come into focus for investigators. The evidence assembled against the pair was overwhelming. Prosecutors built a case involving the rape, torture, and murder of 5 teenage girls: Cindy Schaefer, Andrea Hall, Jacqueline Gilliam, Jacqueline Leah Lamp, and Shirley Lynette Ledford. The bodies of 2 of the victims, Schaefer and Hall, were never recovered, a fact that has compounded the grief of their families to this day. The legal paths of the 2 men diverged sharply. Roy Norris entered into an agreement with prosecutors. He pleaded guilty. In April 1981, Norris was sentenced to 45 years to life in prison. His cooperation and testimony became part of the case against his former partner. Lawrence Bittaker went to trial. He faced 26 charges, including 5 counts of murder. A jury convicted him on all counts. On March 22, 1981, Bittaker was sentenced to death. According to CBS San Francisco, the two men were convicted in the brutal rape, torture, and murder of 5 teenage girls, and Bittaker was found guilty on all counts against him and was sentenced to death in March of 1981. The conviction did not unravel on appeal. Under California law, a death sentence triggers an automatic appeal to the state's highest court. In People v. Bittaker, decided in 1989, the California Supreme Court reviewed the case and stated plainly, "We affirm the conviction and sentence." The conviction stood. A later federal matter, a 2003 Ninth Circuit habeas proceeding, concerned only a dispute over attorney-client privilege and a protective order. It did not vacate or overturn the conviction. Lawrence Bittaker remained a convicted and condemned man. Neither man was ever executed by the state. Instead, both died in prison decades after their crimes. Lawrence Bittaker died on December 13, 2019, at age 79, at San Quentin State Prison, where he had spent his years on death row. Roy Norris died in February 2020, at age 72. The two men who had met in a prison in 1977 both ended their lives behind bars, 4 decades after the summer and fall that destroyed 5 families. What remains, when the legal proceedings are over and the perpetrators are gone, is the memory of the victims and the questions that endure. Cindy Schaefer was 16, walking home from a church youth meeting. Andrea Hall was 18. Jacqueline Gilliam was 15. Jacqueline Leah Lamp was 13, barely a teenager. Shirley Lynette Ledford was 16, on her way home from a Halloween party. They were daughters, students, and friends, taken across a span of just over 4 months in 1979. This case left a lasting mark on how law enforcement in California approached serial predators. It underscored a hard truth that ran through each disappearance, that predators can present as ordinary men driving ordinary vehicles, and that the vulnerability of young people moving through public space demands vigilance. For 2 of the families, there was never even the small mercy of a recovered body. Schaefer and Hall were never found, leaving an open wound that no verdict could fully close. The convictions in this case were secured, affirmed, and never overturned. That is the record. But records cannot restore what was taken. 5 teenage girls did not come home in 1979, and the responsibility for that rests by the judgment of a jury and the affirmation of California's highest court, with the 2 men who died in prison for what they did.